You know, I think we're supposed to write these things down, and I tried to write about 10 times, and I couldn't get anything to come out, and so I took notes, and I figured that's what I'm supposed to do. So I want to pray for a second. Okay. I've been taught in the fellowships that I'm a part of that I'm supposed to come up here and give a testimony of how God's worked in my life. And I do that by telling what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. So I'll just start in order. What I was like, I've got some notes that says what I was like with my family. I've always been a defiant person from birth, I think. At 5 years old, I was defiant. I did anything outside of the ordinary just to be different, and I don't know why I was that way. I continued that behavior throughout my life. Later on, when I was a teen, I became exceptionally defiant, and I won't go into details on that, but I ruined a lot of, I didn't ruin them, I damaged a lot of relationships with my family. I was very, very abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and I just wasn't a nice person. And I had a lot of built-up anger and a lot of things that I didn't know how to deal with, and that continued. I took it out on my friends also. On my inventory, it came out when I was doing my 8-step that how I treated my closest friends, and I emotionally abused them. I treated them as less than. I made fun of their relationships. I did all kinds of things to either make myself better than or make myself feel better than. It was never an equal relationship. I always had to be more. I had to be faster. I had to be better at everything. And that didn't come out until 2 years ago. I thought I was great friends with these guys. I wondered why nobody liked me. And so, relationships, it continues on to relationships with women. I was not a good person in relationships. My behaviors, what I thought I was this valiant protector, and what I really was is a controlling, abusive, both verbally, not so much physically, but verbally and emotionally abusive boyfriend. I cheated, I lied, I stole, I didn't care about anything but myself. And if it made me feel better, I was doing it. And if you didn't like it, you're gone. I don't care. And that was my thought patterns. And I continued that behavior for a long time, even into sobriety. Early sobriety, I was the same way. And it was always about me. And for a long time, I never realized that. I never knew that that's what I was doing. I never knew. So then it goes on and it says about myself, the way that I was towards myself. At some point, being better than everybody else stopped working. It quit feeding my ego. I had to find ulterior motives to feel better. I did that with women, with alcohol. I started drinking at probably age 10, 11. No, it was like 11. I had my first drink. I drank alcoholically. I always wanted more. The first time I took a drink, I thought, oh, that was sweet. I'm going to do that again. Definitely. Took a while. About 15, I was a binge drinker. I would drink on weekends, but I didn't drink like the other guys drank. I got so drunk that I couldn't move every time. And I thought it was great. I'd wake up the next day, have no idea what happened. I'd see pictures. That was right around when social media was coming around, so Facebook. I would find pictures of myself on Facebook, and I thought it was great. I'm like, sweet, look at me, I'm a part of. these guys like me, and I continued that behavior. It filled that void that I had temporarily. We'll move on till I was about 18. I got out of high school and I started becoming a criminal. I just woke up one day and thought I was just going to break the law, a lot. I did all kinds of stuff. On my 18th birthday, I broke into the first place I've ever broke into. I just decided, well, I'm 18 now. It's time to get a burglary charge. I don't know. I never did it when I was under 18. I guess I thought I was a man now. So let's do this. And I haven't been caught for that, so I'm not going to disclose the exact thing. I also haven't made amends for that either. So, and Mike's a police officer, so he's going to let me know. Oh, I just outed him. My bad. Oops. I think everybody knew. And that behavior continued. I committed more crimes, and then the alcohol and drug use started to progress. It became very, very needed. It was no longer a luxury that got me by on the weekends. It became, oh no, I've got to do this now. What am I, my mind was consumed with the next time I was going to drink or do drugs. And that's what it did. During that time, I completely shut out all of my relationships. Family, I just didn't talk to them. And I made up every excuse. I thought it was their fault. I thought they were treating me different. Why am I different? Why are you always going to get in my business? I always thought it was them. I thought that things that happened in my childhood were what caused me to act this way. And I thought that that because you treated me this way, that I'm going to be this way. So I was just vengeful, and I was full of anger, and the further I got into it, the more I started to act out in ways that I wasn't okay with. And those things perpetuated. And about 20, I decided I was going to start doing drugs, like hard drugs. It progressed. Just like any other drug user or alcoholic, I found something that cured all my problems. There's promises in another program, and they go through, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed for how we're halfway through, we're going to know a new freedom. I found a new freedom when I found drugs. We're going to find a new happiness, and I was happy. You give me a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and I was happy. I was okay. And the promises continue, and I can check every single one of those off the list, and that's what drugs and alcohol did for me. But it stops working. Little do you know. So it's just over 2 years now. I was in my house, and I was suicidal, and I had a stripper that lived with me, drug dealers that lived with me, and my house was turning into a trap house. There were people users in and out of the house, and I didn't know what to do. The drugs didn't work anymore. I was an IV heroin user. I was smoking crack. I was doing things that I wasn't okay with, and I didn't know what to do. So I called my mom, which is, it was the only person I thought that I knew would understand. And I didn't tell her what was going on. I told her I was suicidal and I needed help. And she called, and she went around, and she found me a counselor. And at the time, I don't think she knew I was doing drugs. Nobody really knew. I shut myself off from the real world. So she found this counselor, and this was the first time that I really saw God working in my life. And I know I had prayed and asked God to help me, and she found me this counselor, and she was the perfect person, because the minute I met this counselor, I knew that I could trust her, and I shared with her what my drug use and alcohol was, and she got me right away. She knew what I was and what my problem was. So we waited, and I kept seeing her for a while, and everything continued the same. And she warned me. She said, you're going to become physically addicted to these drugs, and you're not going to be able to stop. She told me straightforward. She never lied to me. And thank God she did, because when that day came, I called her up and I said, I'm physically addicted to these drugs and I can't stop. What do I do? And she called up a treatment center. She already had a place lined up. She called up. She had my insurance information. She got everything taken care of for me. At no point did I have any hand in any of that. I just showed up and was given an opportunity to be honest, and I don't know why I told her the truth, but for some reason God let me tell her the truth that day. And so I go off to this treatment center. It's called Glen Bay. It's up in Akron, Rock Creek, Ohio. It's a really cool place. They do 12-step recovery. They take you to meetings. You have to go to meetings every day. They tell you exactly how it's going to be when you get out. They're very, very straightforward. I thought they were full of it. I thought I was good after a week. And they're like, you can leave if you want. And I'm like, cool, it's been a week. I'm going to leave. But I had to find a ride, and it was like 6 hours. So I thought, I don't know anybody that's going to come pick me up from rehab on a 6-hour drive because I want to leave early. So I stayed, and they worked with me, and they never took they didn't even bat an eye at it. That's just how it goes, I guess. Then it goes on to, I'm following it, and I'm not even looking at it. So, early sobriety, the first time I was in here, is full of ego, full of anger, full of self-hatred, and I was unable to be honest. I did not have the ability at the time. The pain wasn't great enough. I was separated from drugs and alcohol long enough to think that I had it covered, and to think that I could halfway do the step work and work the program halfway. I never quite believed that this was life or death, though I'd overdosed before. I had died and been brought back, and I still didn't think it was life or death. Thought I had it. So I worked through the steps. I worked all the way up to a 4th step. I got up there, and feelings started to come up on an inventory that I didn't want to feel, and I used again. And I came back, and I thought I was ready again. This time I worked the steps a little bit better. I found a higher power, which was, her name was Christy. And I continued to work the steps with a higher power that was from this earth. And someone that I thought, I spent a lot of time invested into something that it was not, it wasn't God. Obviously that didn't work for obvious reasons. So it came to a head, it came to a T one day, and I didn't know what to do. I was in recovery, and I was sober, I was in the steps, I was going to meetings every day, and yet I was miserable. And I hated myself, and I hated everything about me, and I didn't see a future. So I went out, and I thought, well, I don't know any drug dealers these days. I don't want to use drugs. I'm in this dilemma that I know the drugs and alcohol aren't the life I want. So suicide was the option. That's where my mind goes. I don't know what else to do. So I went out, and I found this one's cool. This is the blatantly obvious time that God was in my life. So I went down, and I went on 3rd Street. I'm not going to give you the full details, but I picked up a girl, a working girl, because I knew she'd be able to find me drugs. And what I wanted was enough drugs to kill myself. So I find her, and she notices immediately that I looked like I was sober, which I was. So I told her I got out of jail, which she believed. So she goes and gets me drugs, and the whole time I'm thinking, okay, I got to get rid of her so that I can do what I want. But she won't leave. She tells me that she's going to slow dose me so that I don't overdose, which was the first time that I got saved. On the way to get get drugs, I got a phone call. I have it in Galaxy S4, which is cool because when they first came out, they had this feature, and you can yell at your phone when you're getting a phone call, and it says, if you say answer, it will answer itself, right? So I get this phone call. I didn't know. It was in the glove box. It was sitting in the little median, and my phone answered. All I hear is this guy's voice, and he says, Taylor, what are you doing? Taylor, what are you doing? And I look down, I'm talking to an accountability partner on speakerphone, right? That I didn't even know was there. Didn't even know he'd called. So he'd been hearing this whole conversation. So now the word's out. Everybody knows what's going on. You know, I start getting phone calls like crazy. So I turned my phone off. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't accept help at that time. So I get this girl, and we go to this hotel room, and we're doing drugs, and you know, the first thing that she does is she pulls out a Narcotics Anonymous book, and she sets it on the end table and looks at me. And that girl 12-stepped me. A working girl from 3rd Street pulled out a Narcotics Anonymous book, set it on the end table, and talked about getting sober with me at a time when I didn't have any other options. And that girl probably saved my life. She absolutely saved my life. I was willing to listen. I was high enough to be willing to listen. And she talked about getting sober and working the steps. And this whole time I'm sitting here like, man, I went to a meeting yesterday, you know? I know what the 12 steps are about. I've been there, done it. And so I leave, and I don't die that night. I come back in the program, and about 3 weeks later, I drank for the last time I drank. That was January 20th, 2014, which gives me like a year and like, I don't know, less than a month, something like that. So I drank again, and it was for one night. And I came back in, and my sponsor goes, he goes, are you willing to do anything yet? And I said, yes. And this time I was. He said, you need to quit your job. You need to quit your job. You got too much ego in your job. You think you're all that. You think you're running stuff. He said, you need to move in with your parents, the ones in Piqua. And he said, he told me another instruction that I don't remember what it is now. So I did that. I quit my job. I didn't have any other options. At this point, I knew I couldn't do it myself anymore. I'm not strong enough. Drugs and alcohol are more powerful than me. And if you leave me to myself and I'm not following someone else's instructions, somebody that's got God pointing them in the right direction, I'm going to use again. And at least until I find my own God. And and he told me to go back to treatment. So I've been I had been in a program, in a 12-step fellowship for a year, and my sponsor tells me to go back to treatment. So I did. I didn't have any other options. I did that, and we started working the steps. We did 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I ended up switching sponsors for reasons not needed to disclose, but on that inventory, that 4-step inventory, after the 3rd step, I made a decision that it's God's way, and I'm not going to get in the way anymore. I was ready to give up and not try to run it anymore. And I can't say that I did that perfectly, and I still try to take control back. But I was ready enough to work the rest of the steps. And I wrote an inventory, and he told me, he said, it's just because you write it down doesn't mean it's happening again. He said that all you're doing is dictating the past, stuff that's already happened. And I took that, and I could understand that, and I could work with that. And I wrote everything on this, every deepest, darkest secret I've ever had. One of the most freeing experiences of my life was sitting down in front of a man and telling him everything I've ever done, everything that I've been so ashamed of, the things that I drank and drugged over, for years. And just telling him, looking at me and going, all right, I did that. And the weight was lifted. God was in my life, and I knew it. Now I knew it. You know, because on that third step, you don't know it. But you do that fifth step, and you do one inventory, and this is just my experience. I did that inventory, and I shared it all, and God became real. I asked God to remove those defects of character in 6 and 7. I went home after doing a fifth step, and I sat at my house, and I have mixed feelings, and I'm scared, and I don't know what to do. And I asked God. I got on my knees and I asked God, and I said, "Can you take this from me?" And I read a prayer, and the second most freeing thing of my life was saying that prayer and knowing the deep down inside that I was no longer that person, and that God was in control of my life, and that He's running it. And everything changed. Everything changed. The way I talk to people changed. I was able to look at people again. You know, I didn't have to look at the floor when you were talking about something. I began to make a list. I made a fairly long list of all the people, and this is where I discovered how bad I treated my family, and how bad I treated my friends, and how bad I treated the people that I thought I cared about in this list. So I make the list. I start to make amends. I make about, I don't want to lie, it's probably like 5 or 6. Some of the core ones that were really eating at me, I made amends to my mother. I made amends to some other people, and it felt good, and it got me by. I then sat on my amends list for about, I don't know, a few months. I started working 10, 11, 12. I was taking an inventory. I was calling people when I was wrong. See, the thing about a daily inventory is I didn't even know I did anything wrong until I start to inventory it. And then I go, oh yeah, I totally lied to that guy today. So, in the other fellowship, there's like a protocol. It gives you a list of things to do. So I call somebody, I tell them what I did, and I go make it right if I need to. And I started to pray every day. I started to get on my knees and pray every day. It was new to me. You know, a person filled with ego, as I've always been, I'm like, I'm not getting on my knees for nothing. And but I'm not running the show anymore. So my sponsor told me to do that, so I did it. And then step 12, and this is my favorite step. I got to carry the message to other alcoholics or other people who are suffering. It was real to me, and it still is very, very real to me, what it's like to come in here and not have hope, and think you're going to relapse forever, and think you're never going to make it, and that I'm different. And the coolest part about step 12 is, man, to watch people, to watch them change. They're broken, and you watch them get their lives back together, you know? And I've already worked into what I'm like today. I didn't stop and disclose that, but today it starts with my girlfriend. I don't talk to other girls. That's new for me. First relationship, I've never done that. I don't attempt to cheat, and I don't entertain the idea anymore. That's not me doing that. That's a life change because God changed me, and I'm just not interested in that anymore. We don't yell at each other. I did it's called a sex inventory, or a sex ideal, but it's really a relationship ideal, and I did that ideal, and you know what? I stuck to it. It's kind of cool. In that ideal, it says we don't cuss at each other, we don't call each other names. If we don't trust each other, then it's not going to work out. And it's weird, totally new. And I still don't get it, and I still don't do it right. I just recently started paying rent. Been living with her for 3 months. It's like still progress, not perfection. But it's different. I can tell her I love her and mean it. It's not about getting something. It was always about getting something. If I say this, she'll get off my back. If I say that, she'll do this. It's not about that anymore. In that relationship, we stay out of each other's programs as part of fellowship. I don't get in her program because I don't want to. I got enough problems to deal with. With my friends, I have real friends today. It's cool. I've had one of them's here. He locked me in his basement once. I thought I was gonna get high. He told me to come over, and he put me in his basement. So couldn't leave. So that's cool. But I didn't have people like that. I hung out with drug dealers and drug addicts, and we lived that lifestyle. And it was always about getting more and who's got more and who can I hang out with's got more money than me. If you got more money than me and you are friends. We're dudes. I'll tell you anything you want to hear to make you believe it. But it was never a give and take relationship. And now I feel like I have something to give back. It's not about just taking everything anymore. I have friends that call me when they're struggling and they don't know what else to do. They're asking a drug addict, a guy who's been abusive to everybody in his life. They're asking me for advice. What's going on? But it's not me. You know what I mean? It's what God has done. And luckily, I've put myself through a lot of things. It gives me a lot of experience on a lot of stuff, and I don't regret any of it. I treated a lot of people poorly, but in order for me to talk to the guy who treated people just like I did, I had to go through that, and I had to do those same dirty things. And it's awesome to sit down with a guy and he thinks he's different, and that he's done more and he's done worse, and go, nah, you're all right, man. You're gonna make it. It's not the worst thing I've heard. In fact, I've done worse, and here it is. You did that. You stopped there at least. And those people become my friends, and they continue to be my friends. I've got so many friends I don't even know what to do with them all. It's amazing what God through the 12 steps has given to me. My mother, we have a great relationship. It's the coolest thing ever. We used to never talk. We didn't talk for years. Literally for years we didn't talk. And now we call each other a couple times a week. We're like, hey, what's up? Nothing. What are you doing? She's always trying to give me money. Part of my amends process is not taking money from people anymore. But it's cool that she's trying to, that we're on that level. Now I know that she wants the best for me. I always thought she was trying to tear me down, just cramping my style. And that wasn't it. That wasn't it. She always just wanted the best for me. And the same for my dad. He's doing the best that he could. And all my family members, my brothers, everybody, they were all doing the best that they could. So now that I'm through the 12 steps, or I'm still working on it, I would be lying if I told you I made all the amends, but I'm working on them. I made a few this week. I got a new sponsor who was real adamant that I need to get to those amends, and I believe him. And I'm able to show up to Christmas now and Thanksgiving, and when my parents call me, I'll answer the phone, and those relationships are rebuilding, and I can't ask for anything more. That's great. I am in a position where, my mom said this to me not too long ago. She's in the room, if you guys haven't noticed, keep looking at her. She said, you're probably you're probably the one we're the least worried about right now. I thought, really? Really? You know? I'm thinking about like my history and all the things that I've done. I'm like, I'm the one you're least worried about? Come on. It's gotta be some kind of joke. I don't know how much time I got.